so catchy. So I'm so grateful to have heard that song for the first time today. So there's people entering the room. Welcome, everybody. Welcome into this next session on bioenergy success. I'll wait for a few more people to jump in and we'll get started. So while people are entering the room, I just want to say amazing job on using the chat. Amazing job on chatting. I know we can't talk, through the cameras to each other, but that chat is watched. We see, I take notes from it. So keep chatting in there. If you have anything and even questions, just put them into that chat. There's a question box in this chat as well. So please use that. So welcome everybody. We're going to get started into this next session. So this one is on bioenergy success, and I have the honor of introducing all of the participants that are going to be speaking today. So the first one, of course, is Chris Henderson, who you've seen throughout the conference, the Executive Director of Indigenous Clean Energy of ICE. We also have Blair Hogan, the CEO President of Gunta Business Consulting. And we have Tina Rasmussen, Corporate Development and Project Coordinator of MLTC Bioenergy Center. So I'm going to give this all back to Chris, and Chris is going to take it away for an amazing workshop on bioenergy success.
Hey, thanks, Madeline. When people talk about renewable energy, they talk about solar or wind or hydro and sometimes geothermal. But you know what? We have a lot of bioenergy resources in this country, particularly forest products resources, but also with agriculture, with sewage waste and other things like that. This is a huge area for Indigenous clean energy opportunities. And I'm really delighted that Tina and Blair are going to give us some insights to how this works. One of the things that we really want to try and do is connect the 3 points of the triangle. The first point being how Indigenous lands are used to generate feedstock and the jobs and the impact from that. Second point is how we convert that feedstock into an energy resource. And thirdly, how we make it into energy. So I'm going to turn to Tina first, who's going to give us a really incredible story that's being written as we speak in Saskatchewan. And then after that, I'm going to turn to Blair. And after that, we're going to go interactive. So let's make it work. Tina, over to you.
Good day, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to speak to all of you today. As introduced, I work for a corporation called Meadow Lake Tribal Council Industrial Investments. Right now, we have the pleasure of, well, maybe it'd be better if I just go through my few slides here and kind of do a bit of an overview. Then it'll be a little easier to understand where I'm coming from and how we connect in the bioenergy innovation area. So Meadow Lake Tribal Council directly owns its Economic Development Corporation, Meadow Lake Industrial Investments. Our tribal council is made up of 9 First Nations communities. We were founded in 1981. We have 5 Cree First Nations and 4 Dene First Nations. We're all located in Northwest Saskatchewan, and we serve the needs of approximately 15,000 First Nations members. Like all tribal councils, we do very similar things in terms of providing essential programs and services around child and family services, education, health, elders, justice, so on and so forth. But one of the big things that we do, of course, is provide economic development opportunities for our communities and also develop economic development opportunities to create revenue streams so that revenue can go back to support the work being done at our local Indigenous community levels. So one of the first things that Meadow Lake Tribal Council did was back in 1988, they went into partnership and purchased shares in a sawmill that's located in Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan called North Sask Forest Products. By 1998, MLTC had purchased 100% of the shares of this sawmill. Currently, we own North Sask Forest Products. It's a softwood lumber producer, and we produce probably about 150 million board feet of timber, dimensional lumber that we supply. A big percentage of it heads into the U.S. market, and some of it stays in the Canadian market. In 2018, we expanded that to purchase L&M wood products, which we use to produce pressure-treated products. So these are your fence rails, posts, that type of thing, treated lumber. So we are a one of one, a model for developing Indigenous communities. I think as time passes, we are seeing more and more Indigenous communities move into the forestry industry. But up until now, the Tribal Council had a lot of foresight in terms of taking what, as Chris said, is in our backyard, that forest, and turning it into something, a renewable item that we can turn into a benefit for our First Nations communities. One of the big ways that we do this is another corporation that the Tribal Council owns 50% of. We share this ownership with Paper Excellence, who operates a pulp mill across the highway from our sawmill. We do that because we're a softwood lumber producer. Paper Excellence is a hardwood lumber producer, and so it's a symbiotic relationship. When you go into the forest, you can't only take a softwood tree, like a spruce tree, you have to make use of the entire forest. So the hardwood, the poplar, and the aspen and all that go to the pulp mill. The softwood comes to North Sask Forest Products to be milled into lumber. Now, one of the things that's very important with this is Mystic Management holds the tenure, the supply of the actual forest goods. That agreement lies with that corporation that the Tribal Council owns. So we own our own forest supply, which is a very important thing in this entire process. We rely very heavily on Mystic Management, who's been in our operation and doing our sustainable forest management since 1988, when we took over ownership in North Sask Forest Products. Now, Mystic Management is responsible for our 5-year, 20-year forest management planning and harvest planning. They do all of our permitting and environmental stewardship. And this is done in conjunction with representatives from our First Nations community, like our tribal vice chiefs sit on this management board, as well as staff from our sawmill, and also staff from Paper Excellence's mill. So we do, through this group, as I said, extremely important, they do all of our forest management planning, which of course, when you're using a renewable resource, you have to ensure that resource is looked after, it's maintained, and it's kept in pristine condition so that it can be used for time immemorial. This group also does the majority of our community consultation. So in impact areas, they go in and make sure that all of our communities are spoken with, and any adjustments that need to be made. If a community comes forward and talks to us about specific area that needs to be left and to be protected, then we have opportunity at this level through Mystic Management and this group to do that community consultation, and the opportunity for the community to talk about what they want to see. Mystic Management also is our harvesting contract manager and our loading and trucking and delivery contract manager, which is very important, as you'll see as I move into the next slide. This plays a huge role in the leadership provided by our tribal council and what they wanted to see. What was the point of buying a forestry company? Right. The other huge thing that ties to Mystic Management is the reforestation end. And of course, this again is the sustainable forestry management. We need to ensure that we are doing things correctly so that this is not a one-off. This is a corporation that's already existed for 32 years and will exist long after I'm here and probably my children are here. It's the intent of our tribal council to ensure that with our traditional values and the fact that we're harvesting off of our traditional land area, our land base, which is Northwest Saskatchewan, we want to ensure that our home, our waters our communities and our children still have all of this in many, many years to come. So this job that Mystic Management does for us is huge and is a really important, the forest management side of it. The sawmill is nothing really in comparison to the forest management side of this whole process. So one of the things that we've been able to do, and one of the big pushes by our tribal council, is why own a sawmill? One of the things that we've been able to do in northern Saskatchewan is, I have a little bit of a slide here that shows you in Canada, Aboriginal forestry employment rates in Canada, 3% of people that are employed in forestry are Indigenous. In Saskatchewan, 31% of people that are employed in forestry are Indigenous. But in the tribal council's traditional area, in the area that we impact, we have 61% Indigenous employment in our traditional area in the forestry trade. So these are jobs in everything from the sawmill to forest management to logging to trucking to loading trucks, all the way down the entire gamut of opportunity that we can influence. Our goal is to try keep that loonie rotating inside of our Indigenous communities. So I introduced you to Mystic Management. They have a really large role in making sure that we support development of Indigenous companies in the forestry industry. There's a little bit of a quote there, and I realize I'm taking into Blair's time here, so I'll hurry up a little bit. So one of the things as well is, and this is probably where the most interest is, we noted that something really large was missing in all of this. We've got the forest management, we've got the mill where, we've got all the logging happening, we've got the mill where all the material is going, it's being produced into lumber, it's being sold. But what was happening with all the waste? Well, if you can see from this slide that what was happening with all the waste is this big picture of this big beehive burner. That's exactly what was happening to it. It was all being dumped into that and was being just burnt, and the smoke was going into the sky. So what MLTC has undertaken is a new bioenergy center. It's currently under construction. We're probably about 45% of the way through our construction. Anybody that's interested, the website is there. It's mltcbioenergy.ca. We ask you to take a look, check it out. You can see every day one of the ladies that's involved in the project uploads new pictures. When this project is completed, this new bioenergy facility, it's built adjacent to the sawmill. It uses all the odds and sods, all the sawdust and trim ends and everything from the sawmill, from North Sask Forest Products, go into this bioenergy facility where they're burnt up, where it creates steam, runs a generator, and actually produces 8.3 megawatts of power. There are a certain portion of that power goes to feed parasitic load, which means to run this plant itself and other and small portions of the existing North Sask Forest Products. But the real story here is 6.6 megawatts of power that's generated through this biomass that used to be burnt in this burner is now being fed, will now directly be fed directly into the Sask power grid. So it ends up being 55,000 megawatts per year, which runs enough power for about 5,000 homes. So for us, this has been the huge step in moving to a new type of technology that completes the process for us. For us as Indigenous people, this is the thing that has been of concern. And the steps that we had seen up until this point were missing, from the life of the tree to the harvesting, to the moving into the sawmill, to producing a revenue stream, to taking the waste and producing it into a bioenergy facility, going back to our communities and creating the tree again, the seedling, and being put back and regrowing the tree. So that's how Meadow Lake Tribal Council has kind of moved, and we just are so proud of this bioenergy project because it's our newest connection in making this a go. So thanks very much, Chris.
Hey, Tina, fantastic. Love the circle and the connections. We're going to come back to that. I'm going to flip right away to Blair. And Blair, you're doing all kinds of bioenergy projects with Gun to Business across the north and elsewhere. Share your experiences. How's it going? What's the connection between the resource, the conversion, and the generation of energy? What do you see working? What are the challenges ahead? What are the opportunities? Over to you, Blair.
Great. What an amazing presentation, Tina. Thank you so much. I wish I could just give you some more of my time to hear more about that project. It's basically the big boy version of what we're doing in Teslin. So in Teslin, and I just want to start back because this is something that I've been brought into in my era of being a professional and being part of my council. I'm on Chief and Council with Teslin Tlingit Council First Nation, and part of my term, I've been there for about 9 years now, has been to get a lot of these types of projects that have been built on and built on and built on over years and years, and just try to get them to the finish line, resource them, team them, and bring them to fruition. But it goes without saying, and I should give a little history, that there's some big pieces that happened in the Yukon specifically, like with the land claims, the Yukon First Nation land claims that 11 of the 14 First Nations have signed. My First Nation was one of the first 4, and there was a big upsurgence at that time in sawmills. So our First Nation did its due diligence. They investigated Crown corporations and First Nation corporations and those community economic development models, but then they more specifically vetted out wood processing, logging, and that led them to biomass. In Finland, they saw that they were using the whole profile of the tree, and they were utilizing energy from the waste. And so we knew that right away. Like, this is in the early 90s when I actually started. One of my first jobs was at the local timber mill in Teslin, where it was about 8 or 9 of us on the line. There's a bunch of people supplying the sawmill, and because of the politics with timber, softwood timber trade at that time, it put us in a financial crisis, and it went out of business. But that left a huge hole in the community because it was such an amazing opportunity. There's so many people that were employed gainfully at that time. We didn't see a lot of those typical symptoms of a community that doesn't have those types of opportunities. It was kind of a golden era community economic development. And so fast forwarding to today, we spent a lot of time kind of getting the forestry management, timber harvest planning. We did a lot of that work, and it was in 2016 when the Yukon government opened up biomass heating strategy. We really kind of recognized that this was the opportunity we were looking for, that there's all these buildings that are being heated by diesel fuel that's being trucked up the highway. We have all of this supply here. And just to focus on the jobs, when we kind of started initiating this process and looking for slashers, really trying to build up a forestry economy in the community, we recognized that there was like tenfold more interest than the jobs that we were creating at the time. We were looking for 4 or 5 slashers. We would get some of these slashing contracts, and we would have 40 applicants. So we knew that there was this pent-up demand, forestry, there was this huge interest. And so, fast forward to today, we have a 1.2 megawatt thermal heated district system in Teslin. This is wood chip fueled, so it's waste wood oriented. And what we recognize as a community is that we had this opportunity that we're involved in community development. We're planning with the municipality. We have a lot of control. We can influence Yukon government, how they tender, how they manage, how they clear lots, how they clear roadways. And so kind of collectively, we've all 3 parties of government have been working together to make waste wood more available. And so we would have projects that would clear roadways, and these are employing people to slash, and we lean towards more labor than equipment in these types of projects. Traditionally, they would kind of get everything skidded and lay down and pushed into a pile and burned, just because it's the most economical way of achieving your permits. But in this kind of new way of doing it, there's additional money being put towards hiring additional labor so that things can be cleanly harvested, stacked, and transported to the biomass plant at no cost to the biomass system, because these are project specific costs. If you got to clear that roadway, you as a contractor, you as a developer, as a community need to deal with that waste. We're giving a really great opportunity to get more value out of that waste. So it started with the school, and then it moved into all these, institutional sized buildings, and we're heating homes as well as duplexes and multi-unit residential buildings, and negotiating a heat agreement with the Yukon government to heat the school, because that's really the anchor heat load in the community. The construction of this project was huge. It created all kinds of jobs, and what we were really excited about is that it was employing the carpenters. It was for all the concrete, because they got to build all the rafting around it, and then all the wood structures that need to go up. There's a lot of equipment work, labor. It was really gainfully employing a lot of our citizens and contractors. And I think that's really important too, is that all the business opportunities that are opening up, myself included, I have a consulting business where I help communities try to determine what is the best way to get into a biomass economy that opens up forestry, that allows heating in an environmentally friendly way, that as a community economic developer, as somebody who's been in communities trying to develop communities as best and wholesomely as we can, biomass, heat generation, harvesting, and the whole economy that supports that, all of those direct and indirect benefits that occur when you have a biomass economy operating in a community, it's beautiful. Like, you have people who are doing more logging than because people typically are already doing heat. They're logging for wood, for cordwood supplies contracts, and we're giving them additional opportunities, and it gives them additional opportunities to kind of market and get bank loans. And so we're seeing foresters getting the right equipment, getting the right training, scaling up. A lot of businesses are always multidimensional, so the forester is also the snowplower guy, but it gives a lot of these contractors that much more certainty over being able to build themselves and their businesses. And maybe just to tie back to kind of this overarching thing that Chris was asking me about, because I do get to see a lot of other communities. I get to work with a lot of other businesses that are in other communities. And, we do see this huge interest. There's this real uptick. I see a 1-minute warning. We see a real uptick in interest. Certainly the money has been there to kind of move a lot of these projects along. But I would 100% say that when it's the community-led, community organized, community pushed, we see more successful results than not. And we're seeing that in the Yukon. We're seeing that all across Canada. A lot of the work that Chris Henderson and his group has been putting forward is a lot of those success stories. So I'm really happy to be part of that and talking to you today. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Blair. Tina, I'll get you to put your camera and mic back on. I would say that I should have mentioned that Blair, as many of you know, is a 2020 Catalyst. As you see by how fast he moves, his nickname is Blazin' Blair from the 2020 Catalyst. My nickname is Captain Tree Turd. You can ask me about that sometime. And I want to note that we got people like Vince Robinson on the line talking about what he wants to do with district energy from New Hawk First Nation and coastal BC. Vince, another 2020 Catalyst. I want to put a couple of questions out to you guys in terms of what's there. One of the questions that was asked was, what kind of skills are needed for the jobs that are being created? So I mean, really curious about that as to what's coming from the different kinds of jobs. You both talked about different kinds of jobs. So what kind of skills do people who are Indigenous do you look for? First to you, Tina, and then to you, Blair.
For myself, with the new bioenergy facility, of course, we're looking for power engineering, I guess, to be working in this particular plant. Electricians, those types of people that in these big tech, more technical type, industrial type facilities, it requires people to have that kind of skill and background because of permitting and all of that. So for us, it is a little bit more rigorous in terms of, but variety of skills all the way along, and that was the whole point. And Blair did a wonderful job of explaining where we were and the reason we did what we did 30 years ago. so, and that build up and that whole training and understanding and learning. So great.
Blair, what do you see the skills needs?
And so there's a bit of a difference here in that we're talking about a lot of people who are just kind of getting forestry skills, chainsaw safety skills. We're seeing a lot of people who are getting, so on the biomass operation side, it's interesting that we're getting biomass specialists coming out of our community that have oil burner certifications. They work with the crews that are building it. Typically, they're involved in the installation and build out. And then it's great because then in Teslin, we have a biomass heat specialist that can be shared with other communities and looks after all of our systems. And more exciting, and I think it kind of speaks to the Tina example, this larger sawmill integration with biomass. We're restarting the sawmill. And I remember when we had the sawmill, we had a sawyer, we had 2 or 3 welders, we had 5 or 6 operators. You have people who are out in the woods that are logging and all the skills sets around that, hoisting, rigging, trucking. It's just incredible, all the different opportunities that these types of projects open up. It's really exciting.
You guys have highlighted this. I mean, we really see that bioenergy is a big Indigenous clean energy job creator. That's why we want to put a lot more attention on it. I'm going to give you 1 more minute each, first Blair and then Tina, and say, what's next for you guys? What's the thing you really want to see next in your work in bioenergy? First Blair and then Tina, and then I'll sum up and hand it back to Madeline.
I'm just so in love with these community-focused district heating systems where we're finding uses for waste wood in wood chip form to heat a ton of buildings. And it's just super simple. The technology is proven. We're not being pushing the marker with electricity generation, which is great. I don't want to knock it down, but I really want to focus on that fundamental, and I really want to see a lot of communities jump at it and use this example to help fuel their success story as well. Thank you very much, Kuntish.
Thanks, Tina.
Well, for myself, I guess what's next for MLTC is, my statement would be, what's not next for MLTC. We intend to continue down this road for renewable energy. This is something that our people and our communities can get behind. We see it as the way of the future, and we want to try and include as many of our communities in as many different types of projects as we can. We have a solar farm next on, hopefully running by this summer. If we can do other bioenergy projects, maybe to move into these industrial, once we've cut our teeth on this one, we can prove that we can do it, then maybe to start building these bioenergy facilities for other sawmills or other organizations and own them as an Indigenous community. So what's not out there? We're going to try for anything and everything we can.
I love that attitude. What's not out there. Just to summarize, then hand it back to Madeline. Great information, guys. I know there's a lot more. Blair and Tina are available. You can send them questions through the chats, and we can connect you guys. There's stuff on the ICE network about their projects as well. And I would just note, Tina, you got this incredible technology with this organic Rankine cycle engine. I love large projects like that. Small projects a bit more of a challenge, but large projects. Would you be open to inviting people in the ICE network to come and visit that site when it's operating about a year and a half from now, and we can see how your Meadow Lake Tribal Council Bioenergy Center is working?
We absolutely would be. We had this conversation. We have a working group that's actually makes up the construction group, I guess, that we meet on a regular basis, and the consensus was we would be happy and proud to do that. We would be a great opportunity to show you our sawmill, where it all began, and our Mystic Management, who does our forest management, and our bioenergy facility, which are all in the same yard, basically. So absolutely, we'd be very happy to entertain a group of people to come in and check it out.
Look forward to that, guys, in about a year and a half. Thank you, Blair. Thank you, Tina. Madeline, over to you.
Thank you so much. Wow. Blair, Tina, Chris, thank you for all that information. I'm going to have to up my skills. I've driven by that pulp mill and, that smokestack my whole childhood because I'm from Isle Cross, and I never knew what those were until today. So thank you for all that information and that enthusiasm, Blair. So we're going to move into the next workshop, but just saying thank you again. I'm going to text my cousins up north right now and tell them there's these job opportunities happening through MLTC. Call Tina. So thank you for that beautiful presentation again. So in the next workshop, which is going to be advancing energy planning in remote communities, I want to let you know there is a big announcement. I don't know if I said that big enough, but big. So I want you to go in there right now. The Minister of Natural Resources is going to be announcing something huge. I don't even know what it is, and I'm excited to hear all about it. So let's see you in the next workshop right away. All my relations, hi, hi.